And then before that, we had our boy Arman Tsarukyan against Christos Giagos, by far the heaviest favorite on the card. He was,
it was nuts.
minus 830 at one point, at least where we were looking. I think he closed closer to like minus 800 ish. And the over under, I remember we were looking at this. The under was a pretty decent dog. It was like plus 155, which made sense because I keep forgetting, was Arman 3-1 coming into this fight in the UFC or 4-1? I think 3-1. And each fight, win or loss, went to decision. And I remember even before yesterday, as when this fight got booked, whatever fight Arman was gonna have booked next, I was already saying he has to finish whoever it is. He has to start finishing people. He can't keep going decision if he plans on doing something, because they gave him the ranking after the last fight after he beat Fervola. But again, that fight, like, he was a heavy favorite in that one, and he didn't finish it. Yeah, he missed the weight, but like maybe even more reason he should have finished it. I mean, I don't know, unless the cut was obviously not good or whatever. And he had like a last minute switcheroo on that, so it was a couple of different things going on there, but he had to get the finish, and he did. And quite the way too. In the first round, right off the bat, was like, what, 3-minute fight? Yeah, 2-3 minutes. Got it. Easy.
I mean, you say easy, but I still think it's impressive that the guy is mainly known for his wrestling. He's known for his grappling, and his ground game is also starting to look much better. Like, he's shaping
on his
up.
feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, his standing game. He's looking much sharper than he did in previous fights.
I'd like to see him use it more, because when I kind of feels weird to say limited capacity that he's done it, but in the amount that he's done it, at least what I've seen, I was like, okay, so you don't look like one of those ground guys that are like super raw on their feet. Like, you clearly look like you have ability. I'd like to see him use it more, and that's how he won this one. So
this is one of those things where you gotta kind of take, and as much as I hate to say this, you gotta take DC's advice a little bit, and you just mix in a little bit of that standing game. You throw some feints, make the person unsure of when you're gonna shoot, make them unsure of what you're gonna do next, because if he can tie that into his ground abilities, he's gonna be unstoppable. There's no way you're gonna be able to beat the guy.
yeah, after his debut against Islam, I think right from there, people that actually watch the sport were looking at Arman thinking, oh, this guy might actually be a problem in this division. If your debut was, and Islam at that time was still riding a winning streak too, and he wasn't like a nobody. So the fact that your UFC debut was against Islam and you pushed him to decision, I don't remember what the scorecard was. I felt he had won maybe one of those rounds, but he clearly just, he being Arman, by the third round was just out of gas. He had nothing left in him, and Islam just took care of him.
But either way, that was an amazing fight.
It was.
It
almost was choreographed. It almost looked like it was a choreographed fight, like how WWE would have like staged it or something, because the fluidity, the movements, everything, the counters on both sides. I think that's the thing. That was one of the commentators, I forget who, or maybe it was a couple of them, agreed. They were saying Islam and his corner probably were not expecting to get this kind of resistance. You know, they probably expected an easier win than what it ended up being. And yeah, probably, because again, the guy's making his debut in the UFC. He was entering the UFC like 11-1 or 12 something like that. He's 17-2 now, so I think he was maybe 13-1 entering the UFC. So it wasn't like he was like a scrub coming in, but you still don't know. I mean, Islam also isn't either. So
who did he call out? Was it
Dan Hooker?
So because him and Dan Hooker, a good matchup?
I think it'll be an interesting matchup, because obviously Dan is known for his striking. Arman showed, again, limited capacity in this fight, but he showed an ability to finish you with strikes. I think it would be interesting, because I would like to see how Hooker combats Arman's takedowns and his ground game. But at the same time, I wonder if Arman will even go for takedowns at that point, because they've been going back and forth like through Twitter and stuff for, I don't know, like a month-ish now. And they don't like each other. And Arman's like vocalized that he really doesn't like him and he wants to kill him. So I would wonder at that point if he would be like, screw this, I just want to fight him, punch him in the face. I don't even want to take him down. If that's assuming that fight even happens. Because let's say Dan loses. Let's see if Dan even fights next week. He's possibly having visa issues. Not possibly, he is having visa issues. But if Dan loses next week, that's, I think, 3 losses in a row, or 2 out of the last 3 at least. I mean, I don't know. Does he have like, if you're Arman, do you even look at it, Hooker, and say, I should fight him?
Yeah.
It's the biggest name outside of Islam that he would have had, obviously.
Then take it at that point. I mean, because rankings aside, I think that name carries weight. Like you start stacking names under your belt, and your rank starts to
Yeah.
move less and less. You'll move up.
See, at that point, the only thing I wonder is, again, this is obviously speculating. So let's say Hooker loses next week, and then they fight. Arman and Hooker end up fighting, and then Arman beats him. Is it as impressive as if he had beat him earlier, given that would have been his fourth loss in a row for Hooker?
That's a fair point.
And the other thing for Arman too, at least for sure, his last two fights, he's been the heavy favorite coming in. He might not even be the favorite against Hooker, but he definitely, if he is, he won't be nearly as heavy a favorite as he has been his last two. Because when he fought for Vola, Arman was, I think, like minus 600 almost. So at that point too, you don't want to have it like a reputation of like, okay, he's winning, but who's he beating?
That's a fair point.
Granted, his one loss was against a guy who's probably one fight away from fighting for the lightweight title in Islam, one or two fights possibly. So, and again, he's winning. When he's fighting, he's winning, but it hasn't been decisive enough, I think, even for his own liking. And he said it after the fight. Sean Shelby told him, like, hey, if you want to actually move up, you got to start finishing fights. Like, if you want to actually get somewhere with the rankings, like compete for a title, you need to start finishing, which made sense. I think that was the correct thing to say. And he finally did it. So he's got to keep doing it too. I'm not saying it has to be a first round finish every time, but he can't be the decision fighter that he had been in the UFC specifically entering this fight.
I think you'll see it. Like I liked the decisiveness that he had during that fight. There was a point where he had knocked I forget his name. Oh my god.
Giagos? This fight or a different fight?
Yeah, Giagos, sorry.
Yeah.
I had a brain fart. Yeah, when he knocked him down, there was no hesitation.
Oh, yeah.
He knocked him down, took like half a second to assess. Okay, boom.
And he went right to it.
Immediately. Like, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see any sort of like, well, maybe I'll wait till he gets up. Or blah. No. Just murder the guy, So I think if you keep seeing a little bit of that, which we probably will, it's going to be good, dude.
He's a strong 155er, man. When I look at him, it blows my mind he makes 155. Granted, again, his last fight, he missed weight. But because I look at him, and he looks like he's popping out of his body. Yeah. How the hell are you making 155, dude? I mean, kudos to him, because he's not a tall guy. I would guess he's like maybe like 5'8", 5'9". I don't know how tall he is, but he doesn't look tall. So the weight kind of is in proportion to his height, but just physically the way he looks, and you could obviously saw his strength, not just in yesterday's finish, but the way he just takes people down and can keep them down and kind of drown them in the waters. He's obviously strong physically, so the finish yesterday wasn't a surprise. It was just more, I think what was surprising is that it took this many fights to finally see it and the UFC again. So we're obviously happy that happened for him. Curious to see what'll be next for him. Let's see if it's the last thing I want to say about him is, so if Hooker actually does continue to have issues with the visa, and let's say he doesn't get it, they're gonna need someone to replace Hooker. I'd love to see they just turn Arman back around and have him fight.
I mean, he can go. He's fresh.
Yeah, he's fresh. He didn't take any damage. It's next week, and this is what I was checking. I believe next week's card is in Vegas. Yes, it is. You're already in Vegas. I don't know if he's I don't know because I think he was meeting Hooker's meeting today. Today's Sunday, right? He's meeting today with in the embassy, one of the whatever they're called, and one of the ambassadors, I think, about his visa to try and make it to Vegas. So let's say it doesn't work. You don't want to scrap that card. I think the card's on the main card too. So you don't want to scrap that fight. He's fresh. Maybe he'll be down to turn around, and I think that will be an interesting fight too.
That would be awesome.
So we'll see. We'll see how that kind of pans out. I'm curious because then if Arman wins that fight, that makes it interesting too. You go back-to-back weeks. You went from a whatever, no knock on Giagos, but going from him to Nasrat, bigger step in competition, obviously. And if you could pull that off, it'll be cool if that happens. But hopefully Hooker can even make his fight. But if he can't, there's at least an option, because UFC's first inkling isn't going to want to be to cancel the fight.